the Army could be something completely different than what it is right now.
He served in the United States Army and was in Afghanistan. He practiced law for 7 years. He's from South Carolina, the first state that separated from the Union. Now he teaches theology and spirituality at Villanova University. I want to find out what does July 4th means to him as someone who has seen the United States from all these windows. Watch till the very end, because he's a great singer. He's going to sing for you, and I am sure you will like it. Today's guest is Dr. Byron Wratee. Can you share with us the experience of growing up in South Carolina?
I grew up in South Carolina in a small town called Kingstree, and it's in what we now call the Gullah-Geechee corridor. So I'm very proud to be a part of the Gullah-Geechee people, these groups of Africans who were brought to South Carolina and they were able to retain large portions of African culture, cosmologies, ways of being, dialects that keep us. So I have never questioned whether I'm an African. I very much feel like an African in the Americas, and that the Gullah Geechee people are those types of people. And to be in South Carolina is to be situated and grounded in a people, in a community, and a land. South Carolinians tend to think that you can't claim to be a South Carolinian, a native, unless you can trace your ancestry back like 7 generations. I can do that. We've been in this state, on this land, picking blueberries and blackberries, riding down, going to the beach. And a huge part of that for African Americans has, in South Carolinians in general, has been military service. Is the ability to protect the place and the environment and the culture and the way of life that we've been in. For white South Carolinians, in my opinion, it's protecting a way of life grounded in slaveocracy. But for Black Carolinians, that has often meant respecting the people, the ancestors that have sustained our way of life. Memorial Day was started in South Carolina by African American slaves and freed people who wanted to pay honor to the Civil War soldiers who gave their lives for their freedom and for the reunification of the country. So it's just important to us, the honoring of our ancestors, the honoring of the people who have helped build the society, the culture, the religion, the faith that has sustained us.
And why did you enlist in the U.S. Army?
I enlisted because I have a long history of service within my own family. I can trace back to the Civil Wars, African Americans in my family serving both on the Union and the Confederate side. Anybody that promised us freedom, we were willing to serve. And that's very common among many Black families when they look at their military service records. We have family members that have served in every branch, in the Army, in the Air Force, the Marines. My brother is a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and we don't have a general yet. So I was in Washington, D.C., had gone to law school, was practicing, and it was the Snowmageddon. That's what we called it. It was a huge, horrible snowstorm in the D.C. area, and I fell in the snow
Oh,
and hurt myself really, really badly to the point where I had to take sick leave. I was just sitting on my bed thinking, I'm not gonna be able to serve. I'm getting older. So I had all the intentions of just stopping my law practice just for a couple of years, serving for a couple of years, and then going back and basically checking off the block of this family tradition of always serving. Like most African Americans in the Army, we weren't combat arms. We're more support, medics and mechanics and human resource officers, chaplains. It's not the war fighting. So that fit with me. So when I joined as a medic, and that's how I ended up there. I ended up serving in Afghanistan in a cavalry unit, and was face to face with war. You never anticipate these things, but it was a really important moment. It's in Afghanistan, I realized that I couldn't go back to practicing law. The dynamics of war and of seeing the best of humanity in the worst situation made me realize that my life and my work and my service and ministry couldn't just be about winning cases. It had to be about larger questions about faithfulness, really. In particular, it was the faithfulness of Muslim interpreters that were guiding us around the country, risking their lives to help us, quote unquote, fight a war on terror, and explaining their service more as jihad, as this striving towards a better Afghanistan, schools for young girls, wells in villages that are remote. Most people don't realize that's the majority of the work that American soldiers did. Building schools, caring for people, making sure little girls could go to school, putting wells in villages. The Army could be something completely different than what it is right now. And part of what I do, my research in peace and violence and theology around anti-Black violence, is just trying to reimagine as a Black service member. We're probably never going to get rid of the military industrial complex. Spend millions of dollars no matter what on on this type of
Mm.
foolishness. But maybe we could be peace building people and do that type of work that I am very proud of from Afghanistan. I'm not proud of fighting wars, but I'm very proud of the things that we did in helping the Afghan people see a different way of life, and especially Afghan women.
When you decided you can no longer practice law and decided to study theology, bring us to that moment. What do you want to accomplish by studying theology at that time?
Yes, that interpreter that I was talking to you about, his name is Muhammad. And we just had a really serious contact with some enemy forces, and a couple of my unit had basically got blown up. The truck got blown up, and we survived. I have a combat medic badge. I have an action badge. I didn't do anything miraculous. I just did my job under the context of war. And but it's not the best thing I've done. The best thing I've done was just going around and giving out medicine and providing urgent care to Afghanis. After that, I was disturbed. I realized now that I had a lot going on inside my head about why am I here? What am I doing? And talking with Muhammad about what it meant to be a good Muslim in the face of all of this violence was a pressing question for me. Am I being a faithful Christian in my military service, in my work, in my thing? Am I basically in the struggle, as Muhammad put it in terms of jihad? Like, what is my jihad? What is the thing that I'm struggling to bring forth into existence in terms of the kingdom of God, the reign of God in life? And I just couldn't see that anymore in the practice of the law, especially the type that I was practicing. I was working with politicians and family law. I eventually got into family law practice, but a lot of what I was doing was in helping people write laws and to pass them. That's a very compromising enterprise. No one gets what they really want. You have to make sometimes very deep principled compromises in order to get something done. And everybody wants sharp change. And I just thought to myself, there's a deeper spiritual and theological drive, desire that's underneath all of this. And I don't hear anybody really articulating it well, especially from the perspective of Black people, what this means for us in the face of anti Black violence, in particular in the United States. When I got back, the Black Lives Matter movement was in full swing. I couldn't ignore. I'm fighting wars one place and then get back, and it feels like a war zone here in terms of Black men. I'm afraid to run down my street at night for exercise in South Carolina. I was having deep concerns about that. So these are the questions I need to answer. And Emory University Candler School of Theology was right there for me. I had ailing parents. My father at the time was sick. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. Came to Candler was best in the long run because it opened me up to Howard Thurman. I met Howard Thurman at Candler.
And then afterwards, you continue your studies and pursued a PhD. And your research focused on something that is deeply related to your personal life. You studied the Red Summer of 1919, when the Black soldiers coming back from World War I were faced with discrimination and then riots. Tell us about this Red Summer of 1919.
When we think of race riots in the United States, that's the memory that's just in us, and it's moving in us. It happened immediately after the First World War, and one of the impetus for the Great Migration was the First World War, as white Americans are leaving cities in order to go abroad and fight in what was then called the Great War. And African Americans are migrating up from the South to replace them in factories and cities and literally their homes, like the whole neighborhoods are taking over by African Americans. And when these white Americans come back home after being trained in war and fighting and the trauma, all of that stuff, they don't leave any of that behind. They come back and they feel as if their communities have been invaded by Black Americans. And so they start wars. They literally terrorize entire Black communities across the United States, not just in the American South. It's happening in Charleston, it's happening in Indiana, Illinois. Washington, D.C. has one of the worst race riots that you can imagine. In Texas, one of the race riots was actually about Black Marines. The presence of Black people in uniform itself was disturbing to a lot of white Americans. How dare you even think of yourself as an American? So military service during that time was linked with this type of Americanness, freedom, citizenship in the minds of white folks, but also in the minds of Black people as well. W.B. Du Bois was an early proponent of military service prior to the Red Summer. He thought that this was the way to convince white Americans about our patriotism. And then once they see how well we could fight for freedom abroad, they would give us freedom here. But that didn't happen. We ended up, as he calls it, the two war fronts, fighting for freedom abroad and then coming back and having to fight for freedom itself. Those race riots that were instigated by white supremacists were horrifying, just very horrifying. White people reconstituted the Ku Klux Klan during this time. It had originally started during the Reconstruction era, but it's after this post-World War II period in Indiana, in the Midwest. So not the South, in the Midwest, that the Klan is reconstituted and used as a means of terrorizing and pushing Black folks out of places like Cleveland and Detroit and like, just get out of our neighborhoods. And Thurman is experiencing this in Atlanta. He starts his freshman year at Morehouse College in Atlanta during the summer of the Red Scare of 1919. Couldn't move freely. As a student at Morehouse, the faculty and administrators told them to don't deal with white people. Stay here. Stay in the safety of this HBCU campus. And it was a scary time. And in the face of all of this, he starts to think about peace and nonviolence and activism. I could see parallels between that as a soldier coming back from Afghanistan after the so-called war on terrorism and the way Black people were being treated in Atlanta during the Black Lives Matter. The correlations were just so rich for me that I was like, I need to sit and study this and to think about what came out of this theologically. And for me, the big theological text that came out of this was Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited.
Mm-hmm.
I could just see with a clear look at the history of Black social life and religious life at that time that his mapping of Jesus's conundrum with what to do about the Romans, what to
Yes,
do about
indeed.
empire. That was a real question. It wasn't just some fake biblical, historical,
Yes.
theological question that he's thinking about. This is the Red Summer.
And so why did they target the Black veterans?
Because being in that uniform was a sign of citizenship, of your willingness to lay your life down for the principle that is the United States. And for people who think that you're less than human, you cannot be a symbol of America. You cannot be a symbol of citizenship. And so the attacks were targeted attacks against African American soldiers.
So you studied Howard Thurman, who of course influenced Martin Luther King. And what is the thing that you love about Thurman? Because it's not just a scholar, he is also a mystic. There is this part that sometimes people miss or cannot quite understand.
I was introduced to Thurman at Candler with in my master's program with Jesus and the Disinherited. Also introduced to him in the chapel at Candler. And I love church. I love church. I love music. And I was always very active in the chapel at Candler, just helping to create and lead in liturgies. And Thurman always came up, especially for those moments in our chapel services where we would use some of his meditations to center down, to focus ourselves. So through the day-to-day ritual, the day-to-day weekly practice of being in chapel, Thurman becomes a part of my life, a part of the way of being. When you're praying with somebody, and this is the Catholic in me too, but he's definitely an ancestor. And to be able to pray with the ancestor, his written prayer, so for his prayer life to become a part of my prayer life, um, through the 3 years that I was at Candler, he never left me. He felt like a friend. And then to make these connections when I'm in my PhD program, to see more deeply how his life kind of has paralleling some of my own movements in life. One of the things I love about him was that he was a church person. He loved the church and he loved creating a church community that could include everyone. And he was sincere with this. He and his wife, Sue Bailey Thurman, both had a mystical experience at Kuiper's Pass in Afghanistan, on the
Oh,
border between
really?
Afghanistan and Pakistan. And they saw in this little area where people were moving from one side of life to the other, what church was supposed to be. Church was supposed to be a fellowship of all peoples. And regardless of religious faith or religious identity. And so they made in their mind when they went back after meeting Gandhi in India that they were going to go home and start a church, the first intentionally interracial church in America that would welcome anybody, even non-Christians, to be in fellowship with one another. And that maybe through liturgy, through intentional community, that we could probably, in segregation, in hatred, build this fuel that's necessary, the spiritual energy necessary to change the world. And I could not agree with him more. I love this man, and I think his vision for the world is the vision that we all should have, a world where the fellowship of all people is the goal.
You study Catholic social teaching. Catholic social teaching talks about the common good. But in American culture, it is always emphasizing on freedom. So how might Catholic social teaching addresses some of the questions of our time? The division and people are in different silos.
That's a very good question. Our Pope, Leo, just gave us a beautiful encyclical that I encourage everybody to read. It really is a primer on Catholic social teaching. And the core principle in all Catholic social thought is the dignity of the human person. Magnificat humanitas is the name. To be a human is magnificent. Then anybody can call themselves a human, an image of God, an icon of God in the religious language. And because it is grounded in the divine, it's eternal. Nothing can destroy it. Nothing. And that's a message for any type of internalized oppression. No matter what is happening to you. This is big for Thurman. No matter what happens, you are a child of God. You are a human being. And that dignity, that divineness that is within you cannot be destroyed. It can be diminished. It can be tarnished. It can be defaced. And the goal of anyone who has decided to follow Jesus is to help people not experience that. Anybody that tries to destroy our ability to live a dignified life, that we have to target. We have to make sure that every human person has the capacity, the goods, the resources necessary to live the dignified life that they're entitled to as human beings. And the common good is all the stuff, everything we need to live a dignified life. Food, water, clothing, everything we need to live, to let this divine light that's in us as a human being to shine. And this is, to me, what is the mission of the church? To build a common good, to worship God, to help every human person, whether they believe in God or not.
So that is very contradictory to the concept of American exceptionalism then.
Very contradictory. American exceptionalism says that there's only Americans are exceptional. We're just having a huge case on birthright citizenship that the Supreme Court, thank God, rightly decided it was too close, but still decided that being on American soil makes you an American. But that can also be the beginning of this type of exceptionalism where you think being on any soil makes you a human being worthy of rights and respects and food and water and clothing. And that's what the Catholic Church teaches. No matter your nationality, no matter where you're from, you don't need to be an American to be entitled to health care, to clean water, to wages. The first encyclical was the church struggling with the idea of socialism and communism. And we said neither. We're focused on families, the right for people to organize into unions, to negotiate fair wages so that their families can live dignified lives. It's about the dignity of human beings who already have God-given dignity. Pope Francis added to that the dignity of all creatures. God is not just saving humanity. God is saving the entire cosmos. I'm usually telling people this when I'm, as a liturgist, the Eucharist is not just human beings getting together, praise God. Bread, wine, crushed grapes now have divinized these things that we don't even think. It boggles my mind. There are some Catholics who are willing to bow before a piece of bread and will walk out and deport another human being who just received the Eucharist. This is insane. You don't know what we're doing. All of creation is going to shine with the glory of God. Plants, animals, humans, rocks, trees, everything caught up in the divine, everything all in all. Catholic social teaching helps me to be sensible to people who may not have this deep religious conviction.
For this July 4th, what is your message for the nation? I know that you are a musician and a liturgist. Can you share with us some of your dreams and some of your hopes, and then sing a song for us?
I pray that the nation recognizes that there's plenty good room. That's a spiritual. I'm going to sing that for us. But that's just the wisdom of the ancestors. That a mindset of scarcity, the fear that there's not enough money, enough resources, enough love for us to just welcome everyone is just really worrisome. It bothers me. It keeps me up at night. I'm in deep prayer for our Haitian brothers and sisters who believe in the promise of America. And I think the promise of America is bring me you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. Bring me the people that the world has said you don't belong and let them find a place, a home, a belonging here. We have to do better. We have to do better when it comes to letting everyone find a space of welcome. And our ancestors sung this. They taught us how to do this by singing it. And this is a song I learned as a little boy growing up in church in South Carolina. Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down. Oh, I would not be a backslider. I'll tell you the reason why. 'Cause if my Lord should call on me, I wouldn't be ready to die. No, no, there's plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, just choose your seat and sit down.
Thank you so much. This is deeply moving, and we hope the message you deliver for the nation will be heard and received. This is very important to continue to uphold human dignity for all persons, and there are plenty of rooms indeed.
Thank you.